breaking up on camera.
He's going to get a drop, boys. Barnes, don't give away just yet. But
Yeah, forget Jacobs.
How long?
You won't get camera 1 for Jacobs here, boys. You want Jacobs recorded. Stand by for iRacing 15 here, please, as we come out to Neil.
Well, if this is what senior golf is all about, is it any wonder that it's turning into such a success? We've had some unbelievable drama out here today. Coming down the 18th, Bob Murphy coming off eagle at 17, found the rough on the left, hacked it up a little bit further. So, par 4 looking perhaps a little out of reach for him. Brian Barnes, Max Faulkner, his father-in-law, signing a few autographs. His son-in-law is underneath the recorder's hut, waiting to see whether or not he's going to get a free drop. All sorts of drama. Here comes the big man, Brian Barnes. Just listen to this reception. He's a popular figure.
Brian just arriving at his ball. And it's under that recorder's hut. David Garland here and Maxi Faulkner, so he's got plenty of expert advice.
Did you get the ball there, David? No. Go on, get down and bloody David, get the ball. You're going to keep it, mate? In his pocket.
Well, even with all that tension down there, on the 18th, these players still finding time to have a chuckle. The 4 days have been played in wonderful spirit. Now, a few moments ago, Bob Murphy was standing over his 3rd shot at 18. You can see the lie for that wasn't a great deal better than the one for his 2nd. Up on the front right corner of the green, no chance, of course, of getting any stop, but it's all right. It's just off the right edge of the green, and it's still beautifully poised. Quite simply, Barnes has to get down in 2, and Murphy down in 2, and we'll have a playoff.
The 3rd member, John Jacobs, don't forget him, here in 2. This is 3rd shot. Get a little bit of a fluff on it. No, maybe. That putt though for 4. At the moment in a 3-way tie for 5th. So a big putt, financially anyway.
Well, Barnes has dropped his ball. He hasn't got that good of a lie. It's a little bit cuppy. He's got plenty of green of work to work with, so he can play a sort of chip and run type of chip. And he's definitely only thinking of one thing, and that's chipping it in.
A shot that Brian Barnes has worked hard on over the last 4 or 5 months, and this will be very similar to his putting stroke. No wrist action at all, and he'll just let the loft of the club lift the ball onto the edge of the green and then let it go from there, rather like a long putt. And it's a very fine shot, but it's come up some 12 or 13 feet away. Barnesy ponders.
Quite do what you said. They've just pitched about 3 or 4 feet short of the putting surface, and that's what took the way off it. But the good thing is he's holed 2 or 3 putts, perhaps not of that length, but something similar in the last few holes. He's finally got 1 or 2 in, and that will stand him in very good stead when the moment comes.
Bob Murphy not taking any time over this, and he'll play this shot a similar way. A little bit more wrist action in the backswing. Slightly more lofted club. That's because he wanted the first bounce on the green. You can then guarantee that you're going to get a reasonable one, but nothing given away yet. And there's huge pressure on Brian Barnes now, because a lot's been talked about of Max Faulkner's Open Championship victory back in 1951. And Brian coming over in his 1st year as a senior to try and create a family double. And that maybe weighed heavily on his shoulders yesterday, but he's ploughed his way back into contention today. He hasn't dropped the shot up to now, and he has a putt from 13 feet on the last green to make Bob Murphy whole to take it into a playoff.
Yes, it's pure match play now for them, and of course they've got to keep their nerves in check and stand aside, and they'd much rather get on with it, I'm sure, while John Jacobs tries to escape with a 4. Come on, come on. Just hasn't hit it. So a 5 to finish. It's a round of 73. For a time he was up there with the leaders, but just frittered a couple away over the last 2 holes. 2 bogeys in the last 3 holes, and he drops back to 4 under par. He started the best, threw in 35, but no birdies coming home.
Just 2 players left out on the golf course, and they will decide who's going to take the 1995 Senior British Open. Shouldn't talk about money in championships, but there's a whole lot riding on this. You get the feeling if he can hole it, Murphy may miss. If he misses, Murphy may hole. Wonderful putt from Barnes. And just look at the delight on the spectators' faces. A superb up and down, a very inventive second shot. There's a tear in the eye of Max, and the heart pumping. He had his 79th birthday yesterday, and all the family had dinner last evening. Pat in the back from Simon Baker. Murphy to tie. But he's up to it. He just banged that into the middle of the hole, and it's a very untidy 72nd hole, but the bogey 5 is good enough to continue this championship to the 17th. That's where the playoff will begin. Well, how's that for an Ayers golf? Unbelievable. One of 8 players could have been in contention. None of them gave it away. We had a couple of eagles at the 17th, and Murphy the only bogey at the 18th in the last 3 groups. Fabulous.
It is indeed. It's very, very good, and wonderful for Brian Barnes that to have played such a good score.
Well, we'll take a short break and get our breath back. The playoff begins at the 17th after these.
Ladies and gentlemen, there will now be a playoff over holes 17 and 18 with Mr. Murphy and Mr. Barnes. That's holes 17 and 18.
Welcome back to Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland, where we've just witnessed the most fantastic climax to the Senior British Open. It's not over yet because we have a playoff between Bob Murphy of the United States of America and Scotland's Brian Barnes. Max Faulkner, 1951, was the Open champion here. That's 44 years ago. and it took another 18 years for a British player to win that title. That, of course, was Tony Jacklin in 1969. The family double is still on. The 17th will be the first playoff hole, all because of this. Barnes's brilliant par putt at the 18th, and just look at the reaction of the big Scot. Absolutely delighted. And I have to say, Bob Murphy made a wonderful job of his putt after it, because the noise at the 18th was deafening. There's Max in the left of the picture, his wife Joan just on the right-hand side, chatting away to Brian's caddy Simon Baker, who's their local Bobby down at West Chiltington and Pulborough area. And no doubt all the members of West Chiltington will be sitting watching Sky at this very moment, anticipating success maybe for Barnesy in the next half hour or so. Bob Charles and John Morgan finished at 6 under par, and they'll take home £19,705. John Ferree and Tommy Horton 5 under, they'll take home 13,500. That's the way it's finished since 1988. 2 wins for Gary Player, a couple for Bob Charles, Bobby Vervey in 1991. John Ferree, who came so close here this year, he won the championship in 92, and the defending champion was Tom Wargle, and it was great to see him out on the Royal Portrush links, putting up a fine performance, but finally falling at the 17th. Now, we've shown you a picture of Max. You've seen him live today at the age of 79, and perhaps we can now reflect on all these years ago.
Funnily enough, the last 36 holes I played with Frank Stranahan, the American, that had won American tournaments, and he nearly won 1947. He second to Fred Daly, and we were drawn together, which rather surprised me. I don't know why, but it was rather nice. But I'd been teaching, I taught Frank Stranahan, and he won the amateur championship at Portrush in 1948. And I'd been teaching him, and yet he was 8 shots behind me with the last day to go. And I was with Ken Bousfield, and I said, I want to go up and see Frank Stranahan, because he was at Chatter. And I walked into his big hotel at Royal Portrush, and he was coming out. He was a weightlifter, you know, and a big chap, but shorter than me, but very powerful. And he said, Max, he said, I'm 8 shots behind you. He said, but it won't take me long to catch you in the morning. So I said, Frank, I said, that's just what I want to see you about. Would you mind coming here? And he said, sure. So I took him up the side on his own, and I said, look, would you mind not saying a word to me all day tomorrow? I'm delighted I'm playing with you, but I said, please don't say one word, and I should be very pleased. Yeah, if that's how you want it. So anyway, I walked on the tee in my yellow trousers, yellow shoes, and I had a striped top, short-sleeved, and walked onto the tee, and I was doing up my shoe, bending down in front of hundreds of people right round the tee in those days. And I said, good morning, Frank. Not a word. He never said good morning. I thought, oh, that's it. And that was it. Never spoke one word. Until we got to the 16th, that morning round, when there was a stile, I was near out of bounds, barbed wire fence. And this stile was up here, and my ball was only a yard away, and I had to swing the club very upright. And I had a little baffy thing, 4 wood in these days, and I knew I was a trick shot player when I was young, and I knew I could do it, and I had to hit this ball out of bounds, through a barbed wire fence, curl it, and I hit this ball and no follow through, otherwise I'd torn my hands to pieces on the barbed wire fence, you see, that my bottom was leaning against. And this ball shot underneath. It didn't raise for 30 yards, hardly at all, went under the wire, and it started to curl, and it curled right round 40 yards or more onto the green, when it was only a 6-iron shot, but my ball travelled about 180 yards in a big circle, and it pitched on the green and stopped like a niblick, and I was only about 5 yards from the pin. And Frank Stranahan's first words, walking from front of the crowd, Max, he said, that's the finest shot I've ever seen in my life. And he shook me by the hand. and I ribbed the hole for a 3. Now, Tony Serdar finished second, and he finished in the same spot in the last round, and he went to try and play it out to hit the wire, and he took 6. And I won by 2 shots. And that trick shot won me the Open. Put my life on it.
And we believe you too, Max. Reminiscing down in his farmhouse in West Sussex. And Max Faulkner looking over his son-in-law Brian Barnes to see if he can win on this golf course and emulate him of 44 years ago. It's a romantic story, and huge applause on the first playoff hole. It's the par 5 17th, 506 yards, and David Garland will pass 2 pieces of paper. They'll have a number on it, and whichever one has number 1 will tee off first, and it looks like Bob Murphy may have just got the nod.
Yes, there was one bit of paper that said it's your honour on, and Bob Murphy got that, so he's taken the honour.
Other way. Other way.
Will it be decided here? A par 5 of 508 yards, and no flaw, no weakness, and no quick hook, which he hit off the 18th tee.
Fine tee shot from Murphy. Now the turn of Brian Barnes, and once again the ball teed down a little, so Brian seeing this one down the left side and drifting it back towards the middle of the fairway. Good solid contact. But he's off to the right-hand side, and that's dived into a really thick part of rough, and he's certainly not going to reach the green in 2 and may have a long shot for his 3rd. If you've just joined us and you come in, we're live on Sky Sports from Royal Portrush. The 72 holes have been completed. Brian Barnes and Bob Murphy have tied at 7 under. They're in a playoff, and this is the first playoff hole.
A par 5, and reachable for if you find the fairway with a drive and an iron, and only one of the 2. Bob Murphy's done that. Brian Barnes is over there in the little gully. We'll have to find what his lie is, but I doubt he can get up in 2. And the great thing about this approach in from the right-hand side of the fairway, you can come in avoiding these bunkers on the left-hand side.
Well, that's what they have in front of them. The Fred Daly Trophy was played for this week. A trophy in memory of Fred, who won the Open Championship back in 1947. It finished in a tie with Neil Coles and Michael Murphy, both players on 292 plus 4, and they will share Fred Daly's award. Back in a minute.
James, that Andrew can hear, John? You're very faint, but I assume that they said that was okay.
Ken's at Barnes's ball there. Right, I shall spin down to Ken very quickly. That's not too bad. No. Could have lost it. Oh, no, he's down to 60 a day, he tells me. Max stopped smoking 4 months ago. We're into a playoff here at Royal Portrush between Brian Barnes of Scotland and Bob Murphy of the United States of America. Both players have driven off the 17th, and Bob Murphy's tee shot has found the centre of the fairway. But for Brian Barnes, he's in trouble, so it's still up there in the air. First of all, we'll watch Bob Murphy. This is his second shot, and Ken Brown, you can maybe tell us exactly how far he has to go.
225 yards to the front of the green, 258 to the flag, going with a 2-iron, in range because he can chase it onto the green. Of course, he got an eagle here last time.
Straight enough. Hang on, there's a bunker over there, and the ground falls towards it. It's all right. They seem a long way from the sand, but that only needs to travel another few inches and was down the slope. But that's no easy up and down.
No, and he may have to chip that with the pop-up sprinkler in front of him. He may just manage to get round the left of it should he choose to putt it. For Brian Barnes, that push tee shot has meant this and a really horrible lie. Plenty of loft on the club now, and he'll be trying to move it some 120, 30 yards down the fairway and leave himself a lofted iron into the green for his third. But Murphy's certainly in no great shape to make a four, so all is not lost. Good connection, the slope pulling the weight back onto the right side, and Barnesy has found the fairway. Been a wonderful afternoon, hasn't it?
It has, and I think from Brian Barnes' point of view, win, lose or draw in this playoff, I think that he will draw enormous confidence from his performance today. He played around with no drop shots. He eventually holed a couple of putts, and the one he holed at the end, even if he does lose, he won't have lost. He'll have proved to himself how well he can still play when under the gun.
So after that lane out with the second shot there, Brian Barnes faces 133 yards to the front, and the flag on 33.166. A lot of breath of wind out here at the moment. Flag cut in the back right corner of the green. Brian on a slight upslope. He's going with a 7-iron.
He's gone at it. He hasn't taken the easy route to the left of the flag. Oh, he's flirted with the bunkers twice. And just off the edge of the green, but not too far from the hole. And more important than anything else, he got the distance right. And I can't help thinking, Bruce, it's something we were talking about a few moments ago, that I honestly believe that the winner of this championship should get onto the US PGA Seniors Tour for a year, because it would give this championship so much credibility, and you would get so many of the good Americans coming over, and that's a way of lifting the Seniors Tour. So the people at the head of it should really look at that and try and get that to happen.
I think that's right, and I mean a lot has been achieved throughout golf by asking the Americans for things, extra places to the Masters, the US Open, US PGA and things like that. And they do they have an enormous amount of respect for the traditions of the courses that these sort of championships are played on, and it certainly wouldn't be a hopeless request.
Well, it'll be a double bonus for his caddy if his man wins this week. Mike Hulbert, who's been working for Bob Murphy now since 1988, proposed to his girlfriend out on the Valley course this week, so quite a story, isn't it?
Another one bites the dust. Well, you have to have a chuckle. There's a lot of tension down there, a lot of pressure as Brian accepts the applause coming on to this 17th green, which is the 73rd hole, the first playoff hole. And Murphy has the putter out, so obviously the pop-up sprinkler not in his way.
Bit of fringe to go over, and a little bit edge of the bunker, the little cuppy area, so it's going to break quite a lot from left to right to start with. It's a sort of putt that I might be inclined to have the pin attended, because the depth perception on these links type greens is very difficult. But Murphy, one of the best putters on the US Tour, 4th on the US senior stats at the moment, so there's probably no better man for the job.
That is not quite the hole. It's got a lot further than I thought it was going to. About the length he left himself at the last. I think you and I have always found that when you get to playoffs, be they in match play or medal, there's a sort of relaxation and tension. You might think it gets worse, but having completed the thing in normal time, I always found that there was a sort of, wasn't so bad going down 19.
No, that's true enough. You've played the course and you've done your level best, and these two players have certainly done that. A thrilling finish they gave us. But it's rather like the 18th a few moments ago. Barnes now has a holeable putt. It's certainly longer than the one he had on the 18th green, but again you feel if he could knock this in, it would put enormous pressure on Murphy, and should he miss it, Murphy will feel a relief of that.
That was not the easiest of putts, because you could see that he was standing below the ball. He had to putt as though hitting it off a ball opposite his ankles, and immediately dragged it away. It was a very difficult putt, even though it wasn't from great range. So that's at best a 5.
Well, this is to win the tournament, of course, and it's almost dead straight. But he's having a good look at it. He doesn't want to look for something that isn't there.
No, he's not wasting too much time. This to win. Putter face got so closed on the way back, and because it was a short putt, he didn't have time to open it with the back of his left hand. Going ahead and holing out. So 5 for Bob Murphy at the par 5 17th. Brian Barnes is still alive, but he's got a tricky little putt. It's a testing distance, just under a yard. Any borrows on it, Ken?
Well, he's missed 1 or 2 of these this week, but certainly today's holed out pretty well. So come on, Brian.
Putting style he changed last evening. A wider stance, crouched more over it, and this to take both of them up the 18th again. Yes, he's got it. Well, he's got out of jail there, Brian. That was a wide tee shot for him. He's such a fine driver of the ball, and 3 putts from just off the edge of the 17th green gives him a reprieve.
It is, and he's going to go to the 18th in much the better frame of mind of those two. Murphy knows that he had the championship in his hands and cast it away.
Murphy came so close in his regular career as well to winning major championships. 1975 at the US Open at Medina, he tied 3rd, missed the playoff there by a stroke, and that playoff was contested between John Mahaffey and Lou Graham. He was tied 2nd in 1970 at the US PGA Championship at Southern Hills. Remember, we brought that to you last year from the same venue. That was behind Dave Stockton, and he finished 2 shots behind Orville Moody in 1969. That was at the Champions Golf Club in Texas.
And also, you and they played against each other in the Ryder Cup matches back in 1975, and they had a couple of good partners, Bernard